Hello everyone, welcome to valuetrainings.com. So now let's see how can we identify the elements on the web page with the help of Selenium WebDriver. That is how Selenium works and how can it identify the various elements on the web page like buttons, text field, links, radio buttons, checkboxes and all. Alright, so the answer to that is Selenium works on the page source. For example, if I go to any website, say bbc.com website, say suppose I go to the page source of this website, you see that there are various tags and attributes on this particular web page, and then there are tags under tags as well. Right, so with the help of these tags and attributes, we actually identify the objects on the web page. And on this, Selenium works and it identifies the elements. So now let's discuss about the page source. That is, in the page source, as we all can see, we have various tags and attributes, multiple tags and attributes. Now, what are these tags and attributes? For example, we have an anchor tag which represents the link on the web page, and every tag can have multiple attributes associated with it. For example, this anchor tag has the attribute ID, then there is one more attribute known as the class, and then there is one more attribute as the href attribute. So based on these tags and attributes, Selenium works and it identifies them. So now how Selenium works and how it identifies the elements on the basis of these tags and attributes, let's discuss that. Right. So in order to understand that, we'll make an Excel file known as the objects, which will help us categorize the various objects on the web page. And I have few columns with me. That is, we have one column as the object, then there is tag name, then there is mandatory attribute, and then we have the optional attribute with us. Okay, now what all different type of objects can you see on the web page? For example, we have one object known as the text field. Then there is also the buttons on the web page, right? Then we also can see the radio buttons on the web page. Then we also have the checkbox that we can see on the web page. Now what else can you see on the web page? Okay, we also have the links on the web page, right? Then there is the drop down as well, and then we can also see the image as well on the web page. So these are the most frequently used elements that you can see on any web page, right? Okay, now every object has a tag name associated with it, right? Every object has a tag name. Now how do you identify these objects on the web page? Well, in order to identify these objects, we need to first of all install a plugin in the Firefox known as the Firebug, which will help us identify the elements on the web page. So I'll open up my Firefox and I'll search for Firebug Firefox. Okay, so we'll talk about Chrome and IE as well, but let's talk about the Firefox first. Okay, so I'll click on the first link and we'll install the Firebug plugin, because Firebug will make your work a little easier to identify the elements on the web page. Okay, and then this is a plugin only in the Firefox only. Alright, so it has been installed successfully in your Firefox, and then you see that once you install it, you will see an extra icon coming up over here, which is the Firebug plugin. When I open it, I open up this Firebug plugin and you can see the window opening up before you. In the HTML tab, you can see the HTML page source of your web page. Okay, and then we can also see this small arrow icon over here as well. So over here, like in the web page, wherever I move my mouse, it will give you the page source of that particular element on the web page. For example, say suppose I go to gmail.com. Okay, right. I go to the Gmail website and I move my mouse anyway. Say, suppose I want to inspect this username text field. So you see that it says that it is an input tag with various attributes associated with it. So this Firebug will make our work a little easier to work with the identification of the elements on the web page. Now say, suppose if I want to work with the Chrome browser. If you want to identify the objects in the Chrome browser, then in the Chrome browser you can use the Chrome Inspector window. For example, I open my Gmail website. I go to gmail.com and say, suppose I want to investigate this next button. So what I do, I right click on it. Now in the Chrome Inspector is already inbuilt. You simply right click on it and then you can find an option, inspect option. And when you click on it, the Chrome Inspector window will open up with the page source of that particular button highlighted in it. And then over here as well we have this arrow icon. You just move your mouse anywhere and it will give you the page source of that particular element on the web page. Alright, similarly in the IE as well, if I open my IE browser, in the IE also you've got the IE developer tool, which is also an inbuilt. We don't need to install it. We don't need to install an extra plugin. So how do you open the IE developer tool? You just simply hit the F12 key from the keyboard and you can see the IE developer tool opening up before you. And out here as well we have this arrow icon. You just simply take your mouse anywhere and it will give you the page source of that particular element on the web page. But we don't generally do it like this. We just investigate in the Firefox browser only. We just investigate with the help of this Firebug and we don't need to separately investigate in the other browsers because the page source of the website remains same across all the browsers. Page source will never change which you are investigating. This is the response from the server which will never change. Right. So say if you want to investigate in the Chrome or IE or Firefox, you'll get the same page source. So what we prefer in Selenium is we usually identify the objects with the help of this Firebug plugin in the Firefox browser. And then you can implement your code across different browsers. You don't have to investigate the same element across the different browsers. Alright, now coming back to our Excel sheet. Okay, the first element is the text field element. Now what is the tag associated with this text field element? That is, the tag name is the input tag. If you see into your web page as well, this is your username text field, right? If I inspect this username text field, you see that this is an input tag, right? Similarly, for the buttons as well, we have the input tag. For the radio buttons also it is an input tag, and for the checkbox also there is an input tag associated with it. But the mandatory attributes will differ. In the case of the text field, the mandatory attribute, the attribute which you will always find is type is equal to text, or you might also find one more attribute, that is type is equal to email as well in some cases. Okay, and then for the buttons we have type is equal to button, or we have type is equal to submit for it. Okay, so type attribute varies in the case of the button and the text field. Alright, now the radio button. For the radio button we have type is equal to radio, and for the checkbox we have type is equal to checkbox. Fine. So these are some of the mandatory attributes which you will always find, which will always be present with these elements on the web page. Right. Now in the case of link, the tag name is the anchor tag associated, and with this anchor tag you will always find an attribute known as the href attribute, which will point towards the URL which opens up when you click on the link. Right, so tag name is anchor and the mandatory attribute is the href attribute. Fine. Then we have the drop down. So with the drop down, the tag is the select tag, which will have various options in it. And for the drop down, you don't have any mandatory attribute for it. Alright, then comes the image. So for the image, we have the img tag, and the mandatory attribute is the src attribute, which point towards the URL from which that image is loading. Alright, fine. And then there are some optional attributes as well. For example, like name, ID, and class. These might or might not be present with any element on the web page. If you have an element, like if an element is having the ID, name, or class, it becomes easy for us to work with it. But not every element would have it. Only the major elements, with the major elements, you might find these attributes: ID, name, and class. Okay, so based on three different these criterias, we will be identifying the objects on the web page. So let's see how can we actually use it with the help of the WebDriver code. So I'll create a new project. I'll open up my Visual Studio and let's implement it. We'll create a new project. Say object identification. Alright, and then I'll just include my Selenium DLLs inside my project. So I right click, add reference, will browse to my location. Here I have my Selenium DLLs. I'll just add it. Okay, and then we'll write a simple script to help you take to the home page of the Gmail web page, and we'll try to log you in by entering the username and password and all everything. Okay, so first of all, I'll just invoke my Firefox browser. Firefox. So first of all, I'll create the object of my Firefox driver service is equal to Firefox driver service dot create default service, and inside it we need to pass the gecko drivers exe file path. Okay, and then I say service dot will also set the binary path as well. That is there in my C drive program files 86, and you have your firefox.exe file. Okay, and then I'll open up my Firefox driver and will pass the service object inside it. Fine. And then next I'll just navigate to my URL, that is I have to navigate to gmail.com. Okay, fine. Alright, so we'll navigate to the Gmail website, and then now next, how will you identify the objects on the web page? So that we will do with the help of this Firebug plugin. Alright, so now firstly I need to enter my username in this text field. Okay, now everything in Selenium is a web element. What is a web element? This username text field is a web element. This button is a web element. This link is a web element. Heading is a web element. Everything is in web element on the web page. For example, say if I go to official website of Selenium, seleniumhq.org website. Out here, I go to my C# documentation for the Selenium. And in this documentation we have an interface known as the web element interface. This web element interface represents the HTML element on the web page, and it has got functions which you can perform on any element on the web page, like clear, click, send the keys with the data, or if you want to extract the text, if you want to get the size of the web element, if you want to get the location of the web element, whether the element is enabled or if it is displayed or not. So it has got various functions which you can fire on any web element on the web page. And if I consider the WebDriver interface, you'll always find a function inside it known as the find element function. This find element function finds the first web element using the given method. Now what is this? Now as we all know that all our driver classes are actually implementing the WebDriver interface. So in all the driver classes you'll always have the find element method in it. And this find element method is based on the by class, which actually holds the mechanism to locate the elements on the web page. For example, the class name, ID, link text, partial link text, name, XPath, and all various locator strategies we have with which we can identify the elements. For example, say I have driver dot find element by dot, say I want to investigate an element with the help of ID, right? So I have, say if I inspect my username text field, this is your username text field, the ID of this is email, right? So I have email as the text field, email as the ID for my username text field. Okay, and then one more thing, if you look into the documentation, if you have this find element function with you, right? Now this find element function, it always gives you the reference of this web element interface. Find element method, it always returns you the reference of the web element interface, right? So it is returning us the reference of the web element interface. Right, okay. And then what you want to do with this web element, you want to type into the username text field. So you simply fire the send keys function with it. That is, send keys function is used to type something into the text field. Okay, fine. Uh, yes. So now let's see, if I execute my code, I'll just run it. Okay, so it opens up the browser. Takes you to the Gmail web page, and then you see that it types Selenium as well into the username text field. Alright, so now various questions might be coming into your mind, that what if multiple elements have same ID, that is the email? Then how can you extract those elements on the web page? So well, the Selenium, every element on the web page, it takes like it is always extracted from the top left to the top right corner of the web page. Alright, Selenium extracts the object on the web page from the top left to the top right corner of the web page. So as soon as it finds the first element, it will use it. It will find the first element with the command driver.findElement. And then if you look into the documentation as well, out here, if you look into the documentation of the find element function, it says that it finds the first web element using the given method. So now then what if you want to get the second or the third element on the web page? So we'll talk about that as well, but for now just keep in mind that find element method, it finds the first web element using the given method with the given command. Alright, fine. Alright, so now coming back to our example, now after entering the username text field, what I want to do is I want to click on this next button, right? So I have this next button whose ID is equal to next. So I'll simply say driver dot find the element by dot ID is next, right? And this will also give us a web element is this, and then what I want to do with this, I simply want to click on the next button, right? So when I run it, alright, so you see that it enters Selenium as well into the username text field and clicks on the next button also. Right, okay. And then one more thing, you can even do the same thing in one line as well. For one element we are writing two different lines of code, right? So or else what we can do is we can either write only one piece of one line of code, that is I will say driver dot find the element by dot id is email, and what you want to do with this, you want to send the keys with the data inside it, right? And similarly for the next button as well, that is by dot id whose id is next, and I want to click on that id. Okay, so execution starts from the left hand side. It will first of all find the web element whose ID is email, and then will send the keys, with the data Selenium inside it. And similarly for the next button as well, will first of all find the element whose ID is next and then will click on it, right? So when I run it again, it will give you the same output. We'll enter the data and will click on the next button. Alright, so you see that it clicks on the next button as well and it enters the data also.